Has fortune left you behind? If so, the Sierra Madre Casino is inviting you to begin again.
I understand the idea of anything for views and trying to put content out as quickly as possible, but you guys could do better than that, honestly.
But mere hours after your hasty statement to both maintain your viewership and get that content out as quickly as possible, Lyric Wolf, the person who accused you of not only emotional abuse, but financial and sexual abuse, completely contradicted your statement by not only releasing video that you did in fact have sexual interactions with them, but also releasing the fact that you deleted all the DMs to cover up what you did. So why would someone who's accused of sexual, financial, and emotional abuse delete all their DMs with their accuser? Here you can clearly see this person has months upon months of sexual roleplay relationship messages with Pirate Software, and if you don't believe it, and that's not enough, you can clearly see that he joined these calls. There is a 9-hour call, there's a 34-minute call, there's 2-hour calls. So unless you think he completely ignored this person, unless he was calling them for months on end, then clearly he straight up lied. When you were in the sphere of friendship, you tried to push that to something sexual and I turned you down. Curls his toes and tenses up at the sensation from the pressure between our waists, letting out a delighted huff through my nose. 1-hour call, 1 day later. When you were in the sphere of friendship, you tried to push that to something sexual and I turned you down. Hey guys, I'm starting to think this Pirate Software guy might not be a very trustworthy figure.
I understand the idea of anything for views and trying to put content out as quickly as possible, but you guys could do better than that, honestly.
Who would have guessed? But unless you think Lyric Wolf is Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb, built a custom mobile Discord client, faked a month's worth of DMs, then didn't have the foresight to fake Pirate's DMs, despite the claims from Pirate that Lyric Wolf doctored the Twitter DMs, then the only logical conclusion is that Pirate Software once again lied. Before that, you edited our logs and made up some weird hypersexual cartoon of who I am. Hell, your own website has you talking in the third person. So now that we've established that not only did the roach lie, with all given evidence, the DMs that were released on that website are more than likely true, let's take a look at some of the DMs I didn't cover. Donate your savings. Thor would push Lyric to donate as much as possible to him, even encouraging Lyric to donate their entire savings. Which is extra funny considering the fact that the donation would have went to Heartbound, which is a game Thor abandoned until he got called out on it, which is presumably to use the money to feed his narcissist streaming empire.
So let's assume for a moment, that you are a narcissist.
Okay. That's going to get clipped.
Lyric says that one night I asked you how much to make Heartbound free. I was thinking about dumping my entire savings into it, but what I have is nowhere compared to what those companies offered you. Thor says, holy shit. Lyric says, I mean, I'm not using it anyways. Thor says, it wouldn't make the game free, but it would definitely make it so we didn't have to worry about this shit anymore. Now, normally I would look at this a little bit more charitably, but does this remind you of anything? Now, keep in mind this girl is underage, and this whole conversation is about her not producing enough sexually explicit avatars. So I'm not going to play the entire clip, you get the idea. Wingless Emoto, the person that he was having make sexually explicit avatars when they were underage, then fired them because they couldn't afford a new tablet when their tablet broke, and then continued to sell this person's avatars after they were fired. I'm curious what these people are going to say now that a victim of abuse has come out recently and is currently still mad with him. I bet it's going to be the key 3 talking points. Remember kids, this was addressed a long time ago. It's all out of context. This person's a liar. So with all that being said, when I look at DMs like this, and a 21-year-old offers to send all of their savings for your game, and I see your response is, wouldn't make the game free, but it definitely would make it so we didn't have to worry about this shit anymore, lol. Not telling them, no, you should probably keep your savings. Or, you know, if you really wanted to do that, maybe I could give you a portion of the profits. Interesting how just conveniently, it's not an overt admission of like, hey, give me your savings, but it isn't like a denial of the savings. Also curious, this is just a couple days after they sexted, which you could say, okay, they're sexting, they're in a relationship, they're going to financially support each other. Except remember, we were good friends for a bit there. When you were in the sphere of friendship, you tried to push that to something sexual, and I turned you down. After that, you went after Shay and made her so uncomfortable. Interesting how these DMs contrast with the narrative of them being a petty, vindictive, sexually pushy donator / pseudo-friend.
You guys could do better than that.
Now moving on to the Kickstarter situation. So initially in these DMs, he mentions the Kickstarter going back to August 28th, then he posts a link to it on September 18th, and then later that day, Lyric pledges $100, very cool, of their free will, no problems there. And clearly Thor is aware that this person gives money, so obviously he was baiting by posting the link, but that's fine, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. But what's weird is one day later, Thor says, looks like the Kickstarter might fail. That's on September 19th. And then says they're going to add a $500 tier. Lyric pledges $500. Then on September 25th, Thor reaches out. The thing is, mega donations are incredible, but not sustainable. You never know when someone like you will come along and inject a huge amount of funds. And then on October 7th, he says, so nervous about the Kickstarter, I guess people don't really want it. Why are you donation baiting a 21-year-old you know doesn't have money to single-handedly fund your projects? And you only make a mention of the fact that they don't have any money after they pledged $3,000. As seen here, that's the next pledge, after Thor guilt-tripped them about it. Thor says, what the fuck, you don't have any money though, holy shit dude. Holy shit dude. What's interesting about that is when Lyric decreases their pledge to $2,000, Thor jumps in and says, saw you decrease your pledge by a lot, everything okay? Lyric says, yeah, Uwu just saw that it was being super funded, I really just intended to push the funding goal, you know? Then Thor says, just worried that people will back out last second and it will fail. Then Lyric says, if it turns out some payments decline and you get less than you need, I'll gladly pay you the difference. Thor says, didn't realize that was your intention. That was on October 15th, and then he later guilt trips this person again. To be real, around 20% of payments decline on average after the fact, and the last hour fluctuates like mad. And then he talks about Heartbound. Why are you guilt tripping this person when you know they'll give you the money, and you know that this person doesn't have any money? It's so fucking greedy and disgusting.
So $3,000 for me at that time was equivalent to like 3 months of revenue for me. I think it must have been like 80% of my money.
I mean, and he clearly knows this too, because he knows to a certain extent because he's saying you have no money.
Yeah, he knows I have no money. He knows I have told him I make like $1,000 a month. He knows this.
So you were mad I didn't reach out for comment last time. Anything for content, you say. So why don't you come on my YouTube channel? We can talk about it, buddy. I'll come on your stream. I don't give a fuck. Let's discuss it. Let's discuss why you lied about this person just being a friend. Let's discuss why you wanted to say these DMs were fake. Could it have anything to do with your wife at the time? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
Everyone, please, may I have your attention? Guests and residents of the villa alike, I ask you to step outside and look to the night sky. It's the moment you've been waiting for, the reason we're all here. The gala event, the grand opening of the Sierra Madre Casino.